This video is going to be about out-of-the-box Rohloff small wheel bikes. But before I start, I should highlight the new shop I set up. This is an illustration I created. If you want to see the original artwork, this is it. It is entirely flat and entirely hand-drawn. I did not want to stylize it too much, and I did not want to use a picture, like an image, a photograph, and to manipulate it. So it was actually hand-drawn. And this is my first attempt. I put it on a bunch of everything that's made out of natural cotton. The only one that has 20% polyester is this hoodie. And I would really like to only sell natural materials, but for now I can't find a hoodie that's 100% cotton. The rest of it is all 100% cotton or porcelain in the case of this mug. And what I have so far is just this one illustration. I want to know what you guys think. Do you like it? Do you not like it? How would you change it? I also want to do a Moulton and Birdy and maybe a few others, and maybe do a t-shirt that features 3 or 4 or several of them without being too kitschy. So we'll see how it comes out. But I'm very curious about what you think of the t-shirts, and I'm giving you a link below. Also, make sure to check out the book. The benefit of reading the book is that if you stick with my channel for 3 years, you might be able to absorb as much knowledge, but the book is just much faster. You can read it in a few days and you have a reference to all the information to max out a small wheel bike or any bike, electric or human powered. Getting back to the issue of the Rohloff, I asked AI to do some calculations, and according to AI, if you just have something like a 50 tooth chainring on the Brompton, you're gonna get 133 gear inches with the current 12 speed setup, which is really a Sturmy Archer wide range gear. Supposedly it has a wider range than the Rohloff, which to me is ridiculous, but according to the numbers it has a wider range. But in any case, AI says I would get 133 gear inches, which is not far from the truth, because I'm using a 60-tooth chain wheel, which would add 20%. So adding 20% would make it 163. I am measuring 148. So it's a little different from what I'm actually getting, but it's not far. Now, according to AI, again with their calculations, with a 50-tooth chainring and a Rohloff in the back, I should be able to get 224 gear inches, which means if I add 20% more, because my chainring is not 50, it's a 60, then I would be adding 45 to this. So what is that? That's 270. So I would move from 148 to 270. That's nearly doubling it. So if I can pedal with sufficient power at 35 miles an hour, and it's not spinning out of control, my legs can take it with the current setup, then with a Rohloff, I should be able to pedal at around 67 or 68 miles an hour. Now, I'm not sure if most people would want to go that fast, even if they could, on 16.25-inch wheels. This calculation is slightly incorrect because the Brompton is a bit more than 16. It's a 16.25 or 16.33, something like that. So I'm not sure if you need a Rohloff, to be absolutely honest. The Rohloff is really best for if you have a recumbent or a Vello mobile and you want to take downhills at 60 or 70 miles an hour and still pedal, especially if you have electric support or whatever. That's when something like the Rohloff is really beneficial. But then some people want it for whatever, bragging right. And the first bike I'm going to look at, all of the bikes I'm going to show you are out of the box. So we are not talking about you installing anything. We are talking about buying something that comes to you in a box. You open the box and the Rohloff, everything is set up. All you need to do is sit on the bike and ride it. So I contacted Pedal Bike for the Moulton, because the Moulton is the king of the small wheel bikes, and if I was looking for one, I would go with this company. I believe they are somewhere in the Northwest. They are not in New York, but they ship around the country. So as far as getting a Moulton locally, maybe B-Fold in Manhattan would be able to get one for you, but I'm not sure if they would go into the trouble of setting it up with a Rohloff. Setting this bike, the Moulton, up with a Rohloff is not so easy because there is a brake. Now you can get a Moulton that is not a separable frame, and that's a much easier case because you can just run the wires right there. But in any case, Portopedal Bike was really helpful, and they got back to me almost immediately, and they are telling me that they would work on it. If you have the money and if you're willing to wait, I'm sure they will install it. In fact, there are all kinds of adapter sets for the Rohloff to help you install it on practically anything. But as you can see, it's a separable frame. There is a triangle, and the Rohloff has two cables. It's not one cable, so it's not quite as easy as running this cable onto a Rohloff hub. It is a different hub, but I do absolutely love the Moultons that they have, the selection that they have, these big high resolution images that are so appetizing. You want to get it. Now the Moulton would be the most expensive bike discussed in this video. If you want a Moulton, if you're coming to this site, you're probably not coming here to save money, I assume. So spending a few $100 extra on allowing them to figure out how to install the Rohloff, or buying materials or adapter sets or whatever, is probably not going to make much of a difference, because these bikes cost thousands of dollars. The cheapest Moulton you get is over $3,000. So these are not Brompton prices, not even Birdy prices. This is pretty expensive stuff. The next bike I want to talk about is, of course, the Birdy Rohloff. I'm kind of partial to getting this one if a Rohloff is what you want, because this is like an old German thing. Even if the frame is made in Taiwan, you get this exceptional front suspension that is probably the best in the business. I don't think you can get anything better for the front. For the rear, I would rather get the Moulton because it's a more long travel kind of a rear suspension. When I had my Birdy for 12 years, and I still tried to put some suspension in here because this was not enough. Now obviously this elastomer was not upgraded on my bike, so for a bike of this class, it's kind of cheap to sell it like this. But Birdy, Riese and Müller, they will sell you upgrades if you want. They cost, I think, a couple $100. They sell it for the front as well, but that's not necessary. What I want to highlight is that it's really not expensive. You are getting a crazy, exceptional hub gear. The Rohloff hub gear has the greatest energy efficiency of something like 94 or 95%. So just as an example, if you are pedaling with putting in 100 watts, out of those 100 watts, 95 or 94 watts would end up turning the wheel. And Shimano, I think, is half of that. Shimano has a ridiculously low level of power transfer. So this is just probably the state-of-the-art Rohloff that you can buy. There is a tensioner in this thing, and it runs on a chain, not on a belt. But I should take a closer look at how the chain is attached. This is a kind of a unique, more modern way of doing the rear dropout. Unlike everybody else, including the Moulton or the Brompton, they have a triangle, and the chain hooks into the triangle. The only way to remove the chain is to disconnect it at some point. So you have a chain tool and you have to separate the chain. That's not the case with the Birdy. The Birdy chain is actually not hooking into anything because the dropout is running above the chain and it reaches down to hold the wheel. So you can remove the chain without disconnecting it. You just pop out the wheel and the chain will just come off. And that's remarkable. In fact, there is this English bike currently called the Prodrive. It used to be the Hummingbird that is doing the same thing. So the dropout is above the chain, or the belt in this case. So you don't have to worry about what is a big problem with belt drives, that they cannot be separated. So they have created all kinds of triangles that screw apart and so on, and those triangles are just not as sturdy as a one-piece dropout. So I just wanted to point that out. And we should also take a look at the Riese und Müller Tinker. It's not a foldable bike, but it is compact enough and adjustable enough to get into most revolving doors and elevators. But check out, it's the same kind of engineering. There is a dropout. It's a triangle, but the chain does not hook into it. It goes in from above, and there's a bit of an adjustment if you want to use a belt drive, so that you don't need a tensioner. I do not mind a tensioner, by the way, and if you look around, I'm providing links below. If you look around on this website, you'll see that Riese and Müller has used tensioners on a belt drive. So it's not impossible that you could perhaps re-engineer a Birdy Rohloff to use a belt drive. Because kind of the only thing that I don't like about this design is that it's still a chain. And if I'm running a single chain in the front and a hub gear in the rear, I really don't need a chain. Then I would prefer to have the belt drive, really. So this is the Riese and Müller Tinker. The whole thing cost about the same money. It's under $5,000 or euros. And what I said about it being compact, if you have a quick release, you can take the front wheel out, you can fold down the steering column, you can pull out this thing, and you can stand it up on the rear wheel, and I can almost guarantee standing up vertically, this thing is going to fit in the revolving door. What I absolutely hate about them is that they are speed limiting this to 20 miles an hour. I might be incorrect, and they might be able to sell you something with a different setting, especially if you're buying it from Germany. But you know, I would not pay $4,000 or $5,000 for an e-bike, especially with a powerful center drive system that locks up at 20 miles an hour. That's just not fair. Not for this kind of a money anyway. Here is the Vello. The Vello is much cheaper. It's several $100s below what the Birdy is charging, and certainly a lot less money than a custom built Moulton would be, but it's not nearly as nice. The cables are all over the place outside, not internally routed like you see on the Birdy, this beautiful internal routing. You're not going to get that with the Vello. There's no front suspension at all. There's a little bit of rear suspension. Actually, it's not bad. It's not worse than the Birdy or the Brompton. The nice thing, what I really like about the design, is that there is no tensioner. It's just a smooth single loop, and it is a belt drive. But of course, that requires the kind of dropout triangle that can be unscrewed, which is not as sturdy as a single piece. But it's nicely done. Overall, it's a nice looking job. I would give it an honorable mention. I would not recommend it. I don't think it's a classic design. Would it last a lifetime? I really don't know. This is a fairly new company on the market. They've been around for maybe 20 years. So it's not a historic company like the Moulton or the Brompton, not even as much as the Birdy. And then another one to look at is the Bike Friday. I'm sure most people never thought of the Bike Friday as a Rohloff thing. The cost of the actual bike is not that bad. If you just want a regular Bike Friday, it's way under $3,000, so it's not bad. But I caught a chat between their customer service and somebody asking about a Rohloff installation, and they said it's going to run you about $4,700. So if you have them install it, then it's going to be a little bit more than getting it from Birdy. And this bike does not have full suspension. It's not a classic design. It actually probably will last a lifetime because it's all steel and it's all hand built. And I would not recommend it because it's not a perfect classic design, but I will give it an honorable mention because it's an honest job. It has really fat wide tires on it. And the nice thing about Bike Friday is it's a small family business. You pay first and you give them the specs and then they build. So they have a very wide array of configurations of anything you can think of, dozens of different colors you can choose. And as you could see, they don't sell a Rohloff, but if you want them to build one, they will do it. And so you don't need to worry about building or modifying it yourself. It's probably easier to have a professional do that. A belt drive, probably not workable because this is a single piece triangle and the chain runs through it, so there's no way to do a belt drive. They would have to cut the triangle and put in a screw, and they will probably not do that. So that's your Bike Friday, and this is the Alpaca. I've already spoken about this bike in a previous video, and you should check those out. And that was in a comparison video review I did on the Brompton G line and some of the other competing bikes that are doing the same thing. And finally, we arrive at good old Kinetics. Kinetics is the one that will send you a Brompton. This should be the classic Brompton. I assume you could do it with the G-line as well. But what they do with the classic is to replace, I think we are talking about replacing both the front and the rear, but at least the rear. So this start off of a complete roll of Brompton is close to $5,000, like $4,700. This is in British pounds, so I'm converting it into US dollars. This is about the same thing Bike Friday is talking about. And I'm not sure if this includes the Brompton bike or if you have to send them one. I'm sure you could buy one in the UK and then they could pick it up. But this is fairly basic. So if you want to add the rag, that's another $100. Gear shifter, okay, maybe standard is gonna be okay. Belt drive, they do belt drive, and that's really an amazing thing. You can download some images of belt drive updated Bromptons. They look really cool. So I guess I might want one for an extra $600. Seat height, I don't care about that. Big Apple, I guess I would get the Big Apple, but it is the same price, so you're not paying any extra money. What is going to cost you plenty of extra is to have decent front and rear hydraulic discs, which if you have a Rohloff, you definitely want to get. Hydraulic discs, front and rear Magura. The cheapest one, this is about $900. So by the time they are done with this, it's not going to be $4,700. It's going to be more like $6,000. The question is, do you want to spend this kind of money for the fold so that you could take this into the grocery store and fold it and shop? So I'm going to show you one of these Rohloff Bromptons, how they look. This guy has, I think, the same 60-tooth chain ring that I have. So I guess he can speed out of his mind with this thing. And you can see that he has the 2-inch wide Big Apple tires front and rear. He has the hydraulic upgrade, the disc front and rear. The cabling is not very elegant here, I'm afraid. But overall it looks really good. And he seems very happy riding this thing. But this is a $6,000 job if you count everything in. And we are using a steel frame as the starting point. So this is not some kind of a titanium job, which would be much, much more expensive than this. It's a nice job, but I guess for the money, I would just go with the Birdy straight out of the box because I already have it. Now, some people already have a Brompton frame, and they are emotionally attached to it, or maybe it's a collector's quality item like the nickel plated frame that I have. It's shown on the cover of my book. I would not want a different frame, and I don't think you can buy a nickel plated at this point. So if that's your case, then you have to send the bike over. You're gonna have to pay for the customs, the tariffs, the shipping, so it's not a cheap game to do. It's pretty expensive. It's probably better suited for people who already live in Europe and within the EU, although Britain is no longer in the EU, so you're going to have to pay some tariffs anyway, even if you're in Europe, if you're not in Britain, unfortunately. So that's my view on the market. I would say if money is no objection, then go to Porto Pedal Bike and get a gorgeous Moulton and wait for 3 months or 6 months, whatever, and pay whatever money it costs for them to configure it. If you're not in that camp and if you want to spend the least amount of money and get the most bike for that money, I can't think of a better option than the Birdy Rohloff. The frame itself is not as sturdy or as long as the Moulton. It's not as low profile as the Brompton, and it's not gonna fold into a shopping cart when you go into the grocery store. But it's an excellent frame if performance is what you want, either touring, traveling. A lot of the Birdy followers use it for travel. but it's a good commuting bike. It does fold and fit under the desk. Not as neat or as quick as the Brompton Buddy does, and I used my Birdy for commuting for years, and it does fit into the revolving door as well. It's just not as easy a fold. All right, this is it for now.
I'll be back.